আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আজকে 10 ডিসেম্বর আন্তর্জাতিক মানবাধিকার দিবস। এই দিবস উপলক্ষে গোটা বিশ্বে নির্যাতিত, নিপীড়িত, বঞ্চিত, শোষিত মানুষের জন্য মানবাধিকার কর্মীরা সোচ্চার হয়েছেন এবং 1948 সালে 10 ডিসেম্বর এই দিবসকে সামনে রেখে জাতিসংঘ মানবাধিকারের যে ঘোষণা দিয়েছিলেন, সেই মানবাধিকার ঘোষণার সিভিল অ্যান্ড পলিটিক্যাল রাইটস পার্টটা বাংলাদেশের সংবিধানে ৩য় অনুচ্ছেদে মৌলিক অধিকার হিসেবে সংরক্ষিত করা হয়েছিল। আজকের বাস্তবতায় দাঁড়িয়ে আমরা অত্যন্ত দুঃখের সাথে জানাচ্ছি, বাংলাদেশে মানবাধিকার দলিত, মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘিত প্রতিনিয়ত হচ্ছে, আমাদের সংবিধান প্রতিনিয়ত লঙ্ঘনের শিকার হচ্ছে। এখানে গণতন্ত্র নাই, এখানে আইনের শাসন নাই, এখানে বিচারহীনতার সংস্কৃতি গড়ে উঠেছে। এর প্রেক্ষাপটে বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী দল তথা বিএনপি বর্তমান সময়ে বিএনপি নেতাকর্মীদের উপরে সবচেয়ে বড় মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘনের ঘটনা ঘটছে বর্তমান সরকারের শাসনামলে, এবং ইতিপূর্বে তথাকথিত 111 সরকারের শাসনামল থেকে শুরু হয়েছে। এরই প্রেক্ষাপটে বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী দল বিএনপি এর মানবাধিকার টিম একটি প্রকাশনা আপনাদের সামনে আজকে উপস্থাপন করতে যাচ্ছেন, যে প্রকাশনার মধ্যে 2009 সাল থেকে 2020 সালের সেপ্টেম্বর পর্যন্ত মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘনের মেজর ঘটনাগুলোকে তুলে ধরে আপনাদের সামনে দেখাতে চেয়েছেন যে এখানে গণতন্ত্রের কি অবস্থা, এখানে মানবাধিকারের কি অবস্থা, এখানে আইনের শাসনের কি অবস্থা, এখানে রাজনৈতিক নিপীড়ন কিভাবে হয়, রাজনৈতিক উদ্দেশ্যে কিভাবে ক্রাইম এগেইনস্ট হিউম্যানিটি হয়। এই সব কিছু তুলে ধরেই আমরা এই প্রকাশনার আয়োজন করেছি। এই প্রকাশনাতে আজকে আমাদের মাঝে প্রধান অতিথি হিসেবে উপস্থিত আছেন আমাদের বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী দলের ভারপ্রাপ্ত চেয়ারম্যান, তারুণ্যের অহংকার, বাংলাদেশের মানুষের অধিকার আদায়ের সংগ্রামের ভ্যানগার্ড জনাব তারেক রহমান, যিনি বইটি লঞ্চ করবেন আজকে। আমাদের মাঝে বিশেষ অতিথি হিসেবে উপস্থিত আছেন জনাব মৃজা ফখরুল ইসলাম আলমগীর, বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী দলের সংগ্রামী সাধারণ সম্পাদক। আমাদের মাঝে বিশেষ অতিথি হিসেবে উপস্থিত আছেন কমিটির মেম্বার। আমার মাঝে উপস্থিত আছেন জনাব ডক্টর আব্দুল মঈন খান, সদস্য স্ট্যান্ডিং কমিটি বিএনপি। আমাদের মাঝে উপস্থিত আছেন জনাব আমির খসরু মাহমুদ চৌধুরী, সদস্য স্ট্যান্ডিং কমিটি বিএনপি। আজকের সভায় সভাপতিত্ব করবেন বিএনপি স্ট্যান্ডিং কমিটির সম্মানিত সদস্য জনাব ডক্টর খন্দকার মুশাররফ হোসেন। ডক্টর খন্দকার মুশাররফ হোসেন আজকের এই সভার সভাপতিত্ব করবেন। আমরা শুরুতেই বুক লঞ্চিং এ যাব। বুক
আমিও আছি
স্যার, আপনারটা বলেছি স্যার, ব্যারিস্টার মওদুদ আহমেদ বলেছি স্যার। বুক লঞ্চিং প্রথমে আমাদের অনুষ্ঠানের মধ্যে আসবে, বুক লঞ্চিং করবেন আমাদের মাননীয় প্রধান অতিথি। এরপরে আমরা একজন ভিকটিম এবং 2জন ভিকটিম ফ্যামিলির সদস্যদের বক্তব্য শুনবো। ওনাদের পেন সরোজ আমাদের সাথে শেয়ার করবেন। আমাদের মধ্যে ইতিমধ্যেই অনেক ডিপ্লোম্যাটিক মিশনের সদস্যরা সংযোগ হয়েছেন। এই প্রেক্ষাপটে আমি প্রথমেই আহ্বান জানাবো আমাদের সম্মানিত প্রধান অতিথি, তারুণ্যের অহংকার, আমাদের বিএনপির সংগ্রামী ভারপ্রাপ্ত চেয়ারম্যান জনাব তারেক রহমানকে আমাদের এই পাবলিকেশন অ্যাবসেন্স অফ ডেমোক্রেসি অ্যান্ড সিস্টেমেটিক হিউম্যান রাইটস ভায়োলেশনস বাই স্টেট অ্যাপারেটাস, এই বইটার প্রকাশনার মোড়ক উন্মোচন করার জন্য জনাব তারেক রহমান।
আমি আনুষ্ঠানিকভাবে এটার উদ্বোধনী ঘোষণা করছি। দেখা যাচ্ছে কি?
জি, আশা করি সবাই দেখতে পেয়েছেন আমাদের বইয়ের কভার পেজ। Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Guest. এই বইয়ের উপরে খুব সংক্ষিপ্ত আকারে একটি সারসংক্ষেপ উপস্থাপন করবেন আমাদের মানবাধিকার টিমের অন্যতম সদস্য, সুপ্রিম কোর্টের আইনজীবী, আমাদের এই টিমে দীর্ঘদিন ধরে কাজ করছেন, যার পরিবার ও মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘনের শিকার হয়েছেন, ফারজানা ইসলাম। মিস ফারজানা ইসলাম, আপনাকে অনুরোধ করছি খুব সংক্ষিপ্ত আকারে এই বইয়ের উপরে কিছু আলোকপাত করার জন্য।
Thank you so much, Mr. Rahman. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. President of the meeting, present here with us the acting chairperson of BNP, Mr. Tarique Rahman, members of BNP Standing Committee, delegates from the foreign missions, embassies, and high commissions, present here the editorial advisors and editorial panels of the today's publication as to absence of democracy and systematic human rights violation by state apparatus, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. On the occasion of International Human Rights Day, this is our second publication as to the issues of systematic human rights abuse in Bangladesh. This country was born following a bloody war in 1971 with a view to establish peace, democracy, and indeed to preserve human rights. However, this country has been experiencing terrible abuses in all sectors, including human rights. The publication that we have launched today is like a drop of water in the ocean as to the abuse of human rights caused by the current Awamalik regime during the period between September 2009 and September 2020. This publication has covered some areas like enforced disappearances in Bangladesh, extrajudicial killing, torture and custodial death, repression on religion and ethnic minority communities, violation against women and children, attacks on freedom of expression in Bangladesh, political persecution, the farcical 11th parliamentary election, the torture on Begum Khaleda and acting chairperson Mr. Tarique Rahman, and some statistics published by the national and international NGOs. The political opponents in general and its leaders and activists in particular are the worst victims of human rights violation in Bangladesh. The facts, statistics, and the indefinite number of untold stories mentioned in the book demonstrate the ugly face of an authoritarian government. The spirit of our liberation war and the dream of our martyrs and great freedom fighters was never for a country like today's Bangladesh. We fought the liberation war on the basic principle of human rights, rule of law, democracy, and justice against any kind of deprivation, torture, and abuse of power. The dream was about social justice, human dignity, and equality, which have been shattered by the millstone of the ruling party, misrule and tyranny. Torture being inflicted on Begum Khaleda and Mr. Tarique Rahman are the two textbook examples of blatant human rights violation in Bangladesh. BNP chairperson Begum Khaleda had been kept behind the bars for about 2 years out of political vendetta in false, fabricated, and politically motivated allegations, while Mr. Tarique Rahman being kept away from his dear country in political intrigues. For both, judiciary has been used to defeat justice. Begum Khaleda is still under surveillance in her house. The iconic statement made by Begum Khaleda in the court in the Zia Orphanage Trust case is in itself a historic document epitomizing human rights violation and denial of justice in Bangladesh. The statement has been also translated into English in this book for ready reference as a burning case of human rights violation against Begum Khaleda. Bangladesh Nationalist Party BNP strongly believes in human rights and relentlessly struggling as a political party for the cause of human rights violation. On the Day of International Human Rights, the BNP observes it urging the current regime to treat the human being like human, regardless of their race, religion, gender, and sexual orientation. We urge upon all to stand against the human rights violation in Bangladesh before it is too late. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now request Mr. Ahmad to progress with the rest of the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Farjana, for your on this book. May I now request Barrister Abrar Ilyas, the son of our missing MP, Mr. Ilyas Ali. Mr. Abrar Ilyas, he himself is also a human rights defender and the son of our missing MP, Ilyas Ali. Abrar Ilyas.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum to everyone present in this online seminar and our book launching ceremony. So today we gathered here on 10th of December 2020, which is the International Human Rights Day. And first of all, I want to thank the Human Rights Committee and our leader Tarique Rahman for helping us and dictate us in completing our publication for the International Human Rights Day. As a token of the International Human Rights Day, we have managed to publish this book based on research and the human rights violations that are currently going on in Bangladesh. From 2009 to 2012, between these 11 years, the amount of human rights violations that have happened in Bangladesh are countless. There are too many, and we have just managed to talk about a few in this publication. If we enforce the disappearances and extrajudicial killings in the name of gunfight has surpassed all odds. Other than that, torture, attack on freedom of expression, and political persecution is on the rise like never ever. I, Barrister Abrar Ilyas, am also a member of the victim family of enforced disappearances. My father, M. Ilyas Ali, who was a parliament member, has also been enforcedly disappeared by the state agencies in 2012. It has been 8 years till that time, and we have still got no whereabouts about him. And along with him, his driver, Ansar Ali, was also enforcedly disappeared on the same day with him. And just 2 weeks before my father's disappearance, student leader Dinar and Junaid were also disappeared from Dhaka. Enforced disappearances is not the only issue that has been going on. Extrajudicial killings, torture, political persecution has been on the rise too much. And we don't really know when is this going to stop and how we will be able to stop it. And there has been the amount of victim families, the issues that the victim families are currently facing, and especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, is unthinkable. Some of them can't even pay their bills. Some of them can't even take their, some of them can't even pay their চিকিৎসা করাতে পারছে না. Other than my father, loads of BNP leaders, and not just BNP leaders, anyone who talks opposite or who doesn't relate to the government or doesn't talk as the government wants them to, they have been the victim of political vendetta by the current state agencies. I want everyone to pray and to pray for the safe return and for the betterment of the families of the victim families of Bangladesh. And everyone present in this meeting should reach their hands out for the victim families in Bangladesh that are currently facing the amounts of problems that they're facing currently right now. So with that, I complete my speech. I want to thank everyone. And I want to thank everyone for this opportunity to give me the time to speak. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Abrar. May I now request Ms. Shama Ubaid?
I'll just take a few seconds, Advocate Asad, to introduce our honorable diplomats, to our honorable acting chairman, Mr. Tarique Rahman, and other distinguished our standing committee members who are present here. With us, we have today so far, we have His Excellency Australian High Commissioner, Mr. Jeremy Brewer, Mr. Kevin Gaw, Political Section Head of Australian High Commission, Don Scrupple, from Political Counselor and Economic Counselor from US Embassy. We have from Canada, we have political officer, Mr. Mohsin. From Turkey, we have Mr. Enis Farouk Erdem joined us. He is the first secretary and deputy head of mission. From UN, we have Mr. Nadim. From IRI, we have Resident Coordinator Jeffrey McDonald and Mr. Amitabh Ghosh joining us today. We have from Norwegian Embassy, we have Ms. Christine, Deputy Head of the Mission. And from Switzerland, we have Mr. Thomas von Greater. I don't know if I've spelled your last name right or not, Head of Political Section. And we have from Japan Embassy, Mr. Setuku Kawakami, Chief of Political Section. We have from Palestine Embassy, Mr. Naim Hussein ID, Head of Administration of the Embassy. From Oman, we have Mr. Taib Salim Alawi, Head of Mission from Oman Embassy. And from ICRC, from Red Cross, we have Ms. Shireen Sultana, Political Officer of ICRC. So far, we have this many diplomats and friends joining us. We all welcome you on behalf of the party and on behalf of our Honorable Acting Chairman. Thank you. And I just wanted to add that the book that the Human Rights team launched today, we will electronically send it to all the missions today, and you will also get a hard copy of the book as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Shama. May I now request Mr. Jahangir Alam, a victim of torture by police who has lost one of his eyes due to police atrocities. Mr. Jahangir Alam is the president of student wing of BNP, Satudal president of Gazipur district, Mohanagari. Jahangir Alam.
I forgot to introduce Mr. Abu Zaki of UK. I'm sorry, Mr. Abu Zaki. He is the political section head of UK Embassy. Welcome to our event today. Thank you. Asad bhai, please continue.
Jahangir Alam. জাহাঙ্গীর
দয়া করে আনমিউট করুন জাহাঙ্গীর আলম।
জাহাঙ্গীর আনমিউট করুন।
জি হ্যালো, আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
হ্যাঁ বলেন।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আজ 10 ডিসেম্বর বিশ্ব মানবতা দিবস উপলক্ষে আজকে এই আলোচনার সম্মানিত সভাপতি, উপস্থিত বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী ছাত্র দলের সাংগঠনিক অভিভাবক, বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী দলের ভারপ্রাপ্ত চেয়ারম্যান জনাব তারেক রহমান সহ উপস্থিত নেতৃবৃন্দ, সবাইকে জানাই বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী ছাত্র দল গাজীপুর মহানগর শাখার পক্ষ থেকে শুভেচ্ছা ও সালাম। আজকের মানবতা দিবসে আমরা 2014 সালে 5 জানুয়ারি অবৈধ সরকারের নির্বাচন প্রতিহত করার সময় দেশনেত্রী বেগম খালেদা জিয়ার ডাকে গাজীপুরের রাজপথে আমরা অবরোধ হরতাল চলাকালীন 4 ডিসেম্বর 2013 সালে আমি সহ আমার অনেক ছাত্র নেতা ওই দিন 14-15 জন পুলিশ গুলি করেছে, মিছিলের সামনে থেকে গুলি করেছে। তখন আমাকে পুলিশ ধরে নিয়ে রাজপথে ফালিয়ে আমার প্রথমত আমার বাম চোখে গুলি করে। বাম চোখে গুলি করার পর আমার চোখটা গলে যায়, বাম চোখটা গলে পড়ে যায় এবং তারপরে মাথাতে গুলি করে। মাথার ভিতরে, ব্রেনের ভিতরে অনেক স্পিন্ডার আছে, যে আমার বাম চোখটা হয়ে গেছে। হ্যাঁ, আমার সামনের বড় যে দাঁতগুলা, যে সামনের দাঁতগুলাও পড়ে গেছে, এগুলা পরে আর্টিফিশিয়াল লাগাইছি। হ্যাঁ, তখন আমাকে ওই জায়গা থেকে আমার সহযোদ্ধা ছাত্র নেতারা অনেকেই, পলাশ আহত হয়েছে, আনোয়ার আহত হয়েছে, তাদেরকে ঢাকায় হসপিটালে নিয়ে চিকিৎসাধীন করছে। আমাদের অনেককেই নির্যাতন করা হয়েছে। পুলিশ আমাদের মিছিল থেকে টেনে হেঁচড়ে রাজপথে এনে রাস্তায় ফালে আমাদের পিঠের উপরে বুট দিয়ে পাড়া দিয়ে আমাদের পিঠে, মাথায়, চোখে গুলি করেছে। এবং ওই দিনই আমাদের সহ 14 জনকে আবার পুলিশ গ্রেপ্তার করে নিয়ে যায় এবং হসপিটালে রেখে ওই চিকিৎসা হয়। তো আমাদের সাথে অনেকে এখনো পঙ্গু অবস্থায় আছে, চিকিৎসাধীন, সুষ্ঠু চিকিৎসার অভাবে। তো অনেকেই আমাদের ছাত্রনেতা যারা আছে সুচিকিৎসা করতে পারছে না এবং সারা বাংলাদেশে এই রকম নির্যাতন ওই 1/11 সরকার থেকে পর থেকে 2008 থেকে 2009 থেকে আজকে 20 পর্যন্ত এরকম গুম, খুন, যত নির্যাতন আছে, ছাত্রদল, যুবদল, এই বাংলাদেশের সকল নির্যাতনের আমরা আমাদের ভারপ্রাপ্ত চেয়ারম্যান ছাত্রদলের মাননীয় সাংগঠনিক অভিভাবক তারেক রহমানের নেতৃত্বে আগামী বছরে 2021 সালের মধ্যেই এই সরকার পতন ঘটাবো, এই আশাবাদ ব্যক্ত করি এবং সকল নির্যাতিতর পক্ষে আমি সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ এবং সালাম দেওয়ার জন্য এবং আমার সুযোগ দেওয়ার জন্য সকলকে ধন্যবাদ দিয়ে আমার সংক্ষিপ্ত আলোচনা এখানেই শেষ করছি। আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
You have listened the pain and sorrows of Mr. Jahangir Alam, who was brutally treated by police. He has lost one of his eyes, and his only offense was that he was a activist for restoration of democracy in Bangladesh. May I now call Ms. Sanjida Tuli. She is the sister of Sajidul Islam Shumon, who is still missing. He was subjected to enforced disappearance. She and her family are coordinating all the families of the victims of enforced disappearance over the year under the name and shadow of Maed Dak, an organization which is called Mother's Call. May I now request Sanjida Tuli to share her pain and sorrows in this seminar.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Sanjida Islam. I'm a sister of enforced disappearance Sajidul Islam Shumon, who was the General Secretary for 38 number BNP in Tejga, Dhaka. He was actually picked up by the RAB personnels, and he, along with his 6 of the friends, it was just before the 4th January election on 2014. Before that, a massive number of arrests and harassments happened with the BNP activists and ground level supporters. So he was one of them, a very strong organizer for Bangladesh National Party. I think that was the reason, only reason, massively on that particular time, if you say just before the election on 5th of January, the December and November, a huge number of abduction and disappearance happened for us, all the activists who were working for Bangladesh National Party. And my brother is one of them, and with him there were 6 other persons who were picked by the RAB from Boshundhara residential area on 4th of December 2013. From then till now, we have raised this issue. We have filed application to all the law enforcement agencies and all the organizations in Bangladesh, and also because but there were no response, or there were no step taken to investigate on these cases, or they have not even replied to us, other than they harassed those victim families all this time. And from government side also, we have not had any of the support on they were not helping to find out all these disappeared persons. So a huge number of enforced disappearance and judicial killing happened on this particular time on that 4th of 5th January election on 2014. And I will say that from our side, from the victim families, when we started raising our voices, started doing the campaigns, because we have raised the issues and cases to all the human rights organizations locally in Bangladesh, and also to the international organizations like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, and UN Working Group for Enforced Disappearance. We filed those cases and also raised it to all the human rights organizations, and also we did the High Court writ. But there is no response on those also. So these last 8 years, these victim families are miserably suffering, and you can understand we have families, we have mothers and who are disappeared, like my brother. They have families, they have kids, they have their wives and mother. So those are every day spending their sleepless nights, and how they are surviving, it is very difficult and tough without that person who is the only earning member in the family. And I will say there are plenty, when we started our case campaign, started doing the press conference and others, we have seen there are so many other families are coming to us, and we have started doing it together. So it is almost now across the country, I can say with us, we are standing together, 552 families now. But there are families which is not listed yet. There, the number is really big now. It is almost like 8 to 9 years, and the number is really big now. So, and from our side, what we have taken all the actions. Actually, last 8 years we have done all the campaigns, human chains, and then press conferences, which was published by the electronic and print medias. And I don't think government have not seen, or any of the law enforcement agencies have not seen that. So, but there is no investigation yet or any response from their side. Whereas from even when they were asking, wanted to know about the whereabouts of these disappeared persons, nobody actually replied from the government side. So thank you very much, everyone who have joined from the embassies, UN, and then IRI, and also Red Cross, and everyone, and our honorable members, and also our acting chairman. Thank you very much for bringing us here so that we can share all our sorrows and what we can do, what we can have the help from anywhere, any part of the world. So we need that help to raise it to the right place, and so that we can have a response, we can have a investigation on those cases. And I think thanks for adding us in this launch of this book in the International Human Rights Day. This book will be a document for us, and those which are the reports already published, all these newspapers within this time, that are really document for us who are struggling with these cases. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening to us. And I will expect that whoever from wherever who can help us on these particular cases, please extend your hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjida Tuli, for your nice words on this occasion. Now we have another victim family, member from victim family, Miss Nasima Akhtar Kalpana. Her husband was a former MP who died in custody, but due to her sickness, she could not come to today's meeting. So we are missing her statement and sharing. May I now proceed with the speech of our special guest, because we want to close the meeting within time. For that reason, may I now request Mr. Amir Khusru Mahmood Chaudhary, Member Standing Committee, BNP, to give his overview on this publication. Mr. Amir Khusru Mahmood Chaudhary. Yeah.
ঠিক আছে স্যার।
আপনার
ঠিক আছে, ওকে।
খুশু ভাই, আপনার
Right. Thank you, Asad. I think, can you hear me now? Thank you, Asad. The chair of the launching ceremony of the book, Dr. Khundakar Musharraf Hussain, Member Standing Committee, Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Tarique Rahman, Acting Chairman, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, who is leading and championing the cause of democracy in Bangladesh. Members of this standing committee, excellencies, other guests present, good afternoon, assalamu alaikum. First of all, I'd like to thank the Human Rights Committee for coming out with yet another of their publication on human rights issues of Bangladesh under the leadership of Advocate Asaduzzahman, Secretary, Human Rights Committee. It's a very commendable job, I must say, they have done, and very consistent with the state of democracy and human rights prevailing in Bangladesh. The book is aptly named Absence of Democracy and Systematic Human Rights Violations by the State Apparatus. The front cover of the book is also very telling, I must say, and it tells the real story of what is going on in Bangladesh. Then again, as somebody said earlier on, that it is, you could perhaps cover, it's like a drop of the ocean. Truly what is happening on the ground is not all being covered in the book, because it's not possible, for the reason that every incident is not either registered or reported with the media or rights bodies, as the victims and their families are subject to intimidation, coercion, and of course the fear psychosis created by the regime. Hence, a lot of these incidents are not getting reported. So whatever is covered is perhaps can always be a process of continuation. We can always add to what we have covered today in the book. It is good to see the book is based on facts, evidences, statistics, with backup reports from large numbers of human rights bodies, multilateral organizations, including UN, parliamentary resolutions, country human rights report by foreign ministries, think tanks reports, and election watchers from all around the world. I need to say that what we could add, perhaps, unless I missed it out, is the reports from international journalist associations like Journalists Without Border, PEN. We've not already included, I think we could include it in the future. The various chapters of the book connects actually where does the most gross violation of human rights and democratic deficit emanating from. This is mostly clearly the disenfranchisement of Bangladeshi citizens from the electoral process is responsible for that. Thereby keep control of the state institutions through politicization and corruption and mindset of one-party system that the ruling regime has. Hence, we see the enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, custodial death, fabricated cases against about 3.5 million BNP workers and leadership, media muzzling, black laws like Digital Securities Act. Instead of ensuring election integrity, they went for election stealing and election rigging. So, unelected from top to bottom in a country who are ruling this country right now. These are all recorded in the book quite comprehensively. I thank the committee once again. These machination plot or scheme to exclude most popular leaders of the largest party in Bangladesh, Begum Khaleda, mother of democracy, and BNP acting chairman Tarique Rahman, as they lack courage to face them politically. And I'm glad these are also recorded well enough in the book. Other violations, of course, are taking place for the reasons of a non-elected government without accountability, impunity, partisan and corrupt and extractive institutions that have been created over the last few years. Issues of electoral integrity is also discussed in the book well enough. At the end of the day, everything is rooted in restoring democracy. election is the soul of democracy. I'll be very brief. I just want to finish with a quotation from Sir Winston Churchill's remark on democracy and election. It goes like this: at the bottom of all tribute paid to democracy is the little man walking into a little booth with a little pencil, making a little cross on a little bit of paper, freely and fairly, which has been quoted in the previous publication of the human rights publication by the Human Rights Committee. So I'm just quoting from there. And so we must together free the little man from the shackle of the tyrannical regime and say goodbye to the regime. Our resolution for let it be our resolution for the new year that we are having shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Amir Khosrow Mahmood Chaudhary, for giving your very valuable remarks, and we have noted your comments and suggestions. In future, we will try to incorporate all these things. May I now request Dr. Abdul Moin Khan, Member, Standing Committee, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, to give his brief overview on the book. Dr. Abdul Moin Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Asaduzzaman, for convening this meeting. Every year, we try to meet and discuss a very important issue in the lives of human beings, not just in Bangladesh, but all around the world. We try to perpetuate the ideas and the thoughts which were conceived and consolidated on the 10th of December, 1948, on the floors of the United Nations. That was 72 years ago. The big question today is how far we have achieved in the year 2020. Have we gained much? Has the situation worsened? Have we achieved very little, or we have achieved a lot? These are the questions that bothers one's mind around the world. In particular, living in a country where the democracy is absent and where the human rights are being trampled, it makes things even more difficult. You have seen only a few weeks ago, the Human Rights Commission sitting in Geneva, they have called Bangladesh into question through their interim report, which they usually do between every 5 years. And there, the country has been totally exposed. It is not that we have done this. Yes, we are blamed in this country because we have belonged to the opposition. And as if being in opposition is a crime in Bangladesh by itself. This cannot be the case. The opposition's job is to ensure the accountability of the government. And that's what we are trying to do. Nothing more than that. But if that becomes an offense, then you can imagine what is the situation in our country right now. The big issue here is not just about political freedom. It's the basic human rights issues which are at stake in Bangladesh at this point in time. What is the biggest issue? Let me single out just one thing without going into many details. Is the right to live. Now, do people in Bangladesh have the right to live if they do not align themselves completely with this government? That is the question people are asking now. Whatever you do, you have to live in an environment of threat, intimidation, and exploitation, unless, as I said, you side with the government in politics, in business, in education, and everywhere. Whatever the government says, you have to say yes. This reminds me of what I just heard from the President-elect Joe Biden of the United States, who said a few years ago, and who said a few days ago, that I do not want yes men. I want men who would like to serve the country. Now, my question is, when will we have leaders in Bangladesh who will have the courage to say that I do not want yes men, I want people in this country who would serve Bangladesh, and they would be looked upon at par with the government supporters. That is the situation where we are here now, and that is the situation from which we have to come out. Let me add one more point. A few days ago, the President-elect Joe Biden also said that I do not want to be the president of the red states of the United States, and I do not want to be the president of the blue states in the United States. I want to be the president of the whole of the United States. Now, is this going to apply in case of Bangladesh? If so, when? Here, those who rule the country, they only belong or they only work for their own party supporters. That cannot establish democracy in a country. And in a country where there is no rule of law, where there is no rule of democracy, there cannot be any human rights. And the violations are recorded in the book that has been published today. But these are not adequate. These are not enough. These are just a glimpse, as most of the speakers had already said. These incidents which had been recorded in the book are only just a glimpse of what is happening right inside Bangladesh. We know this problem exists not only in Bangladesh, but around the world. Even in the US, we have heard the slogan, Black Lives Matter. Yes, I believe that happens everywhere. But the point here is, in the US, there is a remedy for that. You can go and you can seek redress, while in Bangladesh, you cannot. That is the big difference between Bangladesh and those countries where people are striving more and more for human rights. I'll not go long into this debate. It's a point in time when the globe is facing a catastrophe, the pandemic. And because of that, the theme for the Human Rights Day 2020 has been mentioned as recover better. That is, we must come out of this pandemic. I don't know how far our government is working towards that. I know a huge amount has been allocated for those who have been affected by the coronavirus, but the stimulus money, where is this money going to? That is also a big question. If the money is not going to those who are suffering, those who are poor, those who are deprived, and those who are disadvantaged, then the stimulus money is not going to help the people of Bangladesh. And the rights basic human rights of the people of Bangladesh are not going to be protected. I beg and I appeal to the international community for them to see what's happening in Bangladesh regarding the human rights. And I appeal to you, please come forward. Let us all work together and make Bangladesh a country where we can say bravely and with pride that we are observing the human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Moin Khan, for your nice speeches on this occasion. May I now request Barrister Maudud Ahmed, one of the senior politicians of the country, BNP Standing Committee member, a renowned lawyer, a constitutional lawyer, who is also a victim of human rights violations of under this government. Barrister Maudud Ahmed. Barrister Maudud Ahmed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, Honorable Chief Guest, Acting Chairman of Bangladesh Nationalist Party, my colleagues in the Standing Committee, and the distinguished discussants and participants, and excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. This production is an excellent one today, done by the Human Rights team of Bangladesh Nationalist Party under the leadership of Advocate Asaduzzaman. I congratulate him and congratulate all of them for making such an excellent compilation of the events relating to human rights violations. It is, of course, a drop in the ocean. What has happened in Bangladesh in last 10 years or more is beyond any comprehension. The book has covered more or less all the basic violations that have taken place in Bangladesh, and particularly the highlighting the case of Begum Khaleda Zia, elected 3 times by the people as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. And our acting chairman, who lives abroad, but still goes on facing cases, criminal cases against him in the country. So this is a day when we call it an International Human Rights Day, is actually a day of shame for Bangladesh. This is not a day that you can feel proud about. The rise of authoritarianism in the garb of democracy is a new phenomenon that we can see in many countries of the world. This is an area this is a new area where liberal democracies are now receding in their strength because of the rise of the authoritarianism and fascism in the name of democracy. We have to be aware of that. And This originated in Bangladesh, not in 2009, but in 1975, when our constitution was amended by the Awami League government, the same party which is in power. They truncated constitution, defaced and defiled our constitution in order to introduce a one-party monolithic system in Bangladesh. All the political parties were banned excepting one, and all newspapers were banned excepting 4 retained by the state, and judiciary was reduced to or made subservient to the executive branch of the state. The parliament, the one that was there, any bill passed by the parliament could be vetoed by the president. So there was hardly any parliament after January 1975. So this phenomenon in Bangladesh actually started in 1975 and continued whenever Awami League came to power. And this is the continuation 2009 to 2020 that we can see today. What the mindset of the leadership of the Awami League had been in 1975 is the same today in 2020. Today, our foreign friends who are listening to us, I'm sure they're aware that how the state terrorism originated in Bangladesh. Violation of human rights, extrajudicial killing, enforced disappearance, and all custodial deaths, all kinds of crimes originated in 1975 after the introduction of the one-party system. What we need is actually the rule of law. The absence of rule of law, it is because of the absence of the rule of law and good governance that we are seeing that law and order situation is deteriorating every day in Bangladesh. Women, children being raped almost every day. If you read newspapers, you will see not a single day will be there without any incident of a woman or a child being raped. And most of these offenses and crimes are committed by those who are close to the power, close to the government. And they actually get away with it with impunity because the police would not take much action against them. Some of the incidents they had to take action because it blew up in the newspapers in a very large and big way. Otherwise, 95% cases go along without any kind of effective trial or punishment of those who commit these crimes. Finally, I would like to say the answer to all this misfeasance is an election, a democracy where people will be able to vote because the nation has been disenfranchised by this government. In 2014, 5th January election, we had in 153 seats in the parliament were declared uncontested, which means about 50 million people, voters, 50 million voters did not go to the vote centers to vote. There was no election there. In 2018, on the 30th December, 29th December, before the day of the election on 30th, we all know what happened in the country. At night, they went and they took over the voting centers, the polling centers, and they, in collaboration with the election commission officials and with the law enforcing agencies, the Awami League, the hoodlums, were actually casting the votes at night, and the villagers in the remote areas also have seen the same scenario. So democracy has been broken down not by the generals, but by the politicians of the Awami League, of the present government. They are responsible today for the breakdown of democracy in Bangladesh. So what we will have to have is a free, fair, and a neutral election, so that the people, no matter which party comes to power, that is not important. Important is that the power of people has to be restored and their right to vote has to be restored. And then only we can have a truly representative government and the rule of law in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barrister Maudud Ahmed, the eminent lawyer who is an expert in the constitutional law of our country.
I have just a small suggestion to make. I'm sorry. I think that if you allow me just 1 second, I think that from this meeting we can recommend that a high-powered judicial commission should be constituted, headed by a former Chief Justice, to look into all these violations, particularly the individual violations that you have narrated in your publication, so that the people who are responsible for this can be identified and punished. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. May I now request our Honorable Secretary General, Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir, who himself is a victim of human rights violation in every day, who stands for the human rights defenders in every day, and he becomes a victim in every day. Mr. Fakhrul Islam Alamgir, the Secretary General of Bangladesh Nationalist Party.
Thank you, Asad. Is the media connected with us?
Yes, in Facebook.
Thank you. In that case, I would like to speak in Bengali, and because the media wants it in Bengali. জনাব সভাপতি, সম্মানিত প্রধান অতিথি, যিনি নিজে মানবাধিকারের লঙ্ঘনের শিকার হয়ে আজকে নির্বাসিত হয়ে বিদেশে অবস্থান করছেন, বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী দলের সম্মানিত ভারপ্রাপ্ত চেয়ারম্যান জনাব তারেক রহমান, সম্মানিত সদস্যবৃন্দ, জাতীয় স্থায়ী কমিটি, বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী দল, আমাদের এই ভয়াবহ মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘনের শিকার পরিবারগুলোর সদস্যবৃন্দ এবং members of the diplomatic missions, আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আজ বিশ্ব মানবাধিকার দিবস। 72 বছর আগে পৃথিবীর প্রায় সকল রাষ্ট্রই একমত হয়ে হিউম্যান রাইটস ডিক্লারেশন তারা দিয়েছিলেন এবং প্রত্যাশা করেছিলেন যে দিবসটি পালনের মধ্য দিয়ে পৃথিবীর সকল দেশগুলোর মধ্যে, পৃথিবীর সকল মানুষের মধ্যে শুভবুদ্ধির উদয় হবে এবং তারা মানুষ দ্বারা নির্যাতন, নিপীড়ন, হত্যা, অসম্মান করা এগুলো বন্ধ করতে সক্ষম হবেন। জাতিসংঘ সেটাই ভেবেছিল। কিন্তু দুর্ভাগ্য আমাদের, আজ প্রায় 72 বছর পরে এসেও আমরা দেখছি যে কিভাবে একটি জাতি আরেকটি জাতি দ্বারা আক্রান্ত হচ্ছে, নিগৃহীত হচ্ছে, কিভাবে মানুষ মানুষকে হত্যা করছে, কিভাবে একটি জাতি নিশ্চিহ্ন হচ্ছে এবং মানুষ, লক্ষ লক্ষ মানুষ তারা নিজেদের বসত বাড়ি ছেড়ে তারা শরণার্থী হতে বাধ্য হচ্ছেন। এমনকি আমরা দেখছি নিজ দেশে নিজের জাতির মধ্যে কিভাবে শুধু ক্ষমতার জন্য, ক্ষমতার লোভের কারণে নিজেদের মানুষকে, নিজেদের ভাইকে, নিজেদের বন্ধুদেরকে হত্যা করছে, আহত করছে, গুম করে ফেলছে। শুধুবৃন্দ, সেই জন্য আমার কাছে অনেক সময় মনে হয় এই যে বিশ্ব মানবতা দিবস আমরা পালন করি, মানব অধিকার দিবস আমরা পালন করি, অর্থাৎ বিভিন্ন যে দিনগুলো আমরা পালন করি, এগুলো কি শুধু পালনের জন্যই, নাকি সত্যিকার অর্থেই পৃথিবীর যারা নেতা আছেন, দ্য লিডার্স অফ দি ওয়ার্ল্ড, তাদের মধ্যে কি আন্তরিকতা আছে যে তারা সত্যিকার অর্থে পৃথিবীকে একটি সত্যিকার অর্থে শান্তিময় পৃথিবী হিসেবে গড়ে তুলতে চায়? তারা কি চান যে এই দেশে যারা ভবিষ্যৎ প্রজন্ম আসবে তারা একটা নিরাপদ নিশ্চিন্তে বাস করবে? তারা কি চান যে এই দেশের নারীরা, পৃথিবীর নারীরা তারা শান্তিতে ঘুমোতে পারবে, চলতে পারবে? দুর্ভাগ্য আমাদের যে আজকে আমাদের দেশে 1971 সালের যে স্বাধীনতা যুদ্ধ আমরা করেছিলাম, সেই স্বাধীনতা যুদ্ধে আমাদের যে প্রধান বিষয়টা ছিল গণতান্ত্রিক চেতনা, মানবাধিকার, সেই বিষয়গুলো পুরোপুরি এখন অনুপস্থিত আফটার 50 years। এই 50 বছর পরেও যখন আমরা আমাদের অধিকারগুলোকে হারিয়েছি, যখন আমরা আমাদের নারীদের সম্মান দিতে পারছি না, তাদেরকে রক্ষা করতে পারছি না, আমাদের সন্তানদের জন্য আমরা একটা সুন্দর নিরাপদ ভবিষ্যৎ গড়ে তুলতে পারছি না, আমরা আমাদের রাজনৈতিক কর্মী যারা আছেন তাদেরকে আমরা নিরাপত্তা দিতে পারছি না, যখন আমরা সংবাদ কর্মী যারা আছেন তাদেরকে আমরা কোনো নিরাপত্তা দিতে পারি না, তাদের জীবন রক্ষা করতে পারি না, তখন এই দেশে এই মানবাধিকার দিবস যেটা বলেছেন, যে আসলে অত্যন্ত দুঃখের সঙ্গে বলতে হয়, যেখানে আমরা কোনো উৎসবের সঙ্গে পালন করতে পারি না, এটাকে আমাদের অত্যন্ত দুঃখের সঙ্গে, বেদনার সাথে, ভারাক্রান্ত হৃদয় নিয়ে পালন করতে হয়। আজকে সঞ্জিদা কিছুক্ষণ আগে কথা বলেছে, সঞ্জিদের বাসায় আমি অনেকবার গেছি। আমি এখানে যারা ভিকটিম আছেন তাদের প্রায় প্রত্যেকের বাসায় আমি গেছি। আমাদের ইলিয়াসের ছেলে এখানে আছে, আমি তাদের বাসায় গেছি। তাদের মা, বোন, ভাই, তাদের এখনো যে আহাজারি, এটা কখনই মেনে নেওয়ার মতো নয়। কিছুক্ষণ আগে আমাকে ফোন করেছিলেন আমাদের আরেকজন, যাকে আমরা খুঁজে পাইনি এখনো, মুন্না, আমার পাশেই থাকে দক্ষিণখানে। তার মা কিছুক্ষণ আগে ফোন করে বলছিল যে বাবা, আমার ছেলেটা হারিয়ে যাওয়ার 8 বছর হলো, ওকে খুঁজতে গিয়ে ওর বাবাও হারিয়ে গেল। এই যে ডিসঅ্যাপিয়ার্ড, এই যে শুধুমাত্র একটা অপরাধ, তার একটা সুনির্দিষ্ট রাজনৈতিক চিন্তা ছিল, সরকারের মত থেকে ভিন্ন মত পোষণ করত, এই কারণে তাদেরকে হারিয়ে যেতে হয়েছে, খুন হতে হয়েছে। আজকে ইলিয়াসের বাসায় আমি যখন যাই, ইলিয়াসের গুম হওয়ার দিনটিতে আমার তখন সেই ছোট্ট মেয়েটা, যেটার বয়স তখন 6 বছর ছিল, এখন তার বয়স প্রায় 13-14, তার চোখের দিকে আমি তাকাতে পারি না। এটা হচ্ছে বাস্তবতা। আজকে যখন আমরা দেখি যে আমাদের নির্বাচন, আমাদের সংবিধানে যেটা আছে, যে নির্বাচনের মধ্য দিয়ে আমরা আমাদের পার্লামেন্ট গঠন করব, আমাদের প্রতিনিধি তৈরি করব, যারা পার্লামেন্ট গঠন করে আমাদের দেশকে পরিচালনা করবে, সেই নির্বাচন আগে রাতেই ভোট নিয়ে চলে যায়। আজকেও একটি নির্বাচন হচ্ছে, পৌর নির্বাচন, 22টি পৌরসভাতে নির্বাচন হচ্ছে। আমি ইতিমধ্যে যে খবর পেয়েছি, প্রায় প্রত্যেকটি নির্বাচনেই সরকারি দলের লোকেরা দখল করে নিয়েছে পুলিশের সাহায্যে, রাষ্ট্রের সাহায্যে। এই হচ্ছে বাংলাদেশের বর্তমান অবস্থা, যেটা এই বইয়ের মধ্যে অত্যন্ত সুন্দর করে তুলে ধরা হয়েছে। আমি ধন্যবাদ জানাতে চাই আমাদের হিউম্যান রাইটস কমিটির সদস্য যারা এই বইটি পাবলিশ করেছেন, তাদেরকে আমি ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি। এবং যে বিষয়গুলো তারা নিয়ে এসছেন এখানে অত্যন্ত অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয়, বিশেষ করে দেশনেত্রী বেগম খালেদা জিয়ার কোর্টে দেওয়া যে জবানবন্দি 342-এ, এটা একটা ঐতিহাসিক একটি জবানবন্দি। এটাই বাংলাদেশের সঠিক চিত্রকে তুলে ধরেছে তার জবানবন্দির মধ্য দিয়ে। একজন নেত্রী যিনি দীর্ঘ 9 বছর সংগ্রাম করেছিলেন গণতন্ত্রের জন্য, তাকে সম্পূর্ণ বিনা দোষে মিথ্যা মামলা দিয়ে তাকে আজকে আটক করে রাখা হয়েছে দীর্ঘ 2 বছর ধরে। আজকে 35 লক্ষের উপরে মানুষকে মিথ্যা মামলায় আসামি করা হয়েছে, 1 লক্ষের উপরে বেশি আসামি। আমাদের সঞ্জিদা কিছুক্ষণ আগে বলল যে প্রায় 900-র মতো গুম হয়ে গেছে, প্রায় 900-র মতো হত্যা হয়েছে, হাজার হাজার। কয়েকদিন আগে আমার চেয়ারম্যান দেশনেত্রী বেগম খালেদা জিয়া এবং আমাদের ভারপ্রাপ্ত চেয়ারম্যান জনাব তারেক রহমান এবং আমার বিরুদ্ধে আরো একটি নতুন মামলা আওয়ামী লীগের একটি সংগঠনের প্রেসিডেন্ট তিনি করেছেন, আমরা আপনার উস্কানি দিয়েছি এই সমস্ত অপকর্ম যেটা আওয়ামী লীগ করছে এখন সেই অপকর্মগুলো করতে। এভাবেই বাংলাদেশ চলছে। আমার বক্তব্য আমি অত্যন্ত সংক্ষিপ্ত করতে চাই যে এই মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘন আজকে আওয়ামী লীগের একদম একটা স্বাভাবিক জীবন হয়ে ব্যাপার হয়ে দাঁড়িয়েছে। এই মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘন করে তার সংবিধান লঙ্ঘন করছেন। এই জন্যই তাদেরকে অবশ্যই একদিন না একদিন অতি নিকটে তাদেরকে জনগণের কাঠগড়ায় দাঁড়াতে হবে। তাই আসুন আজকে যখন আমরা এই দিনটি পালন করছি, আসুন আমরা সবাই সচেতন হই, আমরা আমাদের দেশের অবস্থা সম্পর্কে, বিশ্বের অবস্থা সম্পর্কে আরো ভালো করে জানি যে কিভাবে মানবাধিকার লঙ্ঘিত হচ্ছে, এবং সবাই একজোট হই আমার অধিকারকে ফিরিয়ে আসার জন্য। আমাদেরকে উদ্যোগ নিয়ে আজকে জনগণকে সঙ্গে নিয়ে আমাদের অধিকারগুলোকে আমাদের ফিরিয়ে আনতে হবে। And I would like to thank the members of the diplomatic missions that they have kindly attended this virtual discussion meeting of our human rights team. And by this time living in Bangladesh, they must have realized the human rights situation in Bangladesh and the democratic situation in Bangladesh. And this the time has come to rise for the interest of the people of the world, that this world should be a place of the good people, of peace-loving people, not hooligans and terrorists. Unfortunately, this government has made this state a terrorist state. And I would like to request the members of the international community, please, especially the democratic countries, they should rise on the occasion and they should do something for the people who love democracy. Thank you. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. May I now introduce our human rights team before you. We have with us our member, Mr. Barrister Jewel Mondol, Mr. Jahidul Alam Hitu, Ms. Farjana Islam Putul, Mr. Abrar Ilyas, Mr. Shanto Shakhawat, and we have also with Mr. Ahad Ahmed. We have today our Foreign Affairs Committee members are also here. Mr. Ambassador Sabiuddin Ahmed, Mr. Muhammad Enam Ahmed, Mr. Mir Hilal, Ms. Jiba Ahmed, Miss Barrister Rumin Farhana, Member of Parliament, Advocate Faima Nasrin Munni. They are also our members of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Also, our member from Australia, Mr. Muhammad Rashid, he has also joined in this meeting. He is with us. Before we proceed with the matter for listening to our acting chairman, may I now request Dr. Khondakar Musharraf Hossain, who is chairing this meeting, to give his brief overview on the book, and after that we'll hear his speech of our acting chairman, Mr. Tarique Rahman. Mr. Khondakar Musharraf Hossain.
হ্যাঁ, শোনা যাচ্ছে?
জি স্যার, শোনা যাচ্ছে।
বিসমিল্লাহির রহমানির রহিম। আমি প্রথমেই বাংলাই বলছি, যেহেতু আমাদের আসলে সময়গত প্রায় শেষের দিকে, এই সংক্ষেপটি বলতে হবে। আজকে উপস্থিত প্রধান অতিথি এবং এই বইয়ের উদ্বোধক আমাদের পার্টির অ্যাক্টিং চেয়ারম্যান তারেক রহমান, জননেতা তারেক রহমান, উপস্থিত আমাদের সম্মানিত আলোচকবৃন্দ এবং এই বইয়ের পেছনে যারা অক্লান্ত পরিশ্রম করে বইটি প্রকাশ করেছেন, আমি সকলকে ধন্যবাদ জানাই। আজকে এই বইয়ে আমরা ইতিমধ্যে ডিসকাশন হয়েছে যে কি আছে কি নেই। আসলে আমিও মনে করি যে এই বইয়ে যে হিউম্যান রাইটস ভায়োলেশনের যে তথ্য আছে তার থেকে অনেক বেশি আসলে ঘটনা আছে। তবুও আমি হিউম্যান রাইটস কমিটি অফ বাংলাদেশ ন্যাশনালিস্ট পার্টিকে আই থ্যাংক ইউ ফর ওয়ার্কিং হার্ড টু কম্পাইল this book, and I believe that the incidents are proportionately very few than that happening in Bangladesh. Here we have heard the discussions of our learned speakers. I believe that everybody now understand, and we are in the situation that there is no democracy in the country, there is no rule of law, and hence the country is ruled by autocratic and fascist government. Why these people, this government is behaving like that is only to stay in power. They are not elected, they came to power by force, by the name of democracy. That's why they had to resort to this sort of autocratic rule by which they want to suppress the opposition view and opposition arguments. That is why so many people subjected to disappearance, subjected to killing, kidnap, and so on. The society has been destroyed. The country's institutions, which run the government, all the institutions have been destroyed by this government only to stay in power, with only one view, to stay in power. Now, judiciary has been destroyed. We have seen an example that Chief Justice of Bangladesh had to leave very unceremoniously. He was thrown out of the country. He was forced to resign from the post. And it can happen in a country like this where the autocratic rule prevails. The government is not only violating human rights, they are also violating the constitution of our country. I like to read out the preamble and Article 11 of our constitution, namely for our distinguished diplomats who are attending us and listening us. The preamble of our constitution says, further pledging that it shall be a fundamental aim of the state to realize through the democratic process a society free from exploitation, a society in which the rule of law, fundamental human rights, freedom, equality, justice, political, economic, social will be secured for all citizens. This is in our preamble. Now, if we read 11, Article 11 of our Constitution, by the title that democracy and fundamental rights. Article 11 says, the Republic shall be a democracy in which fundamental human rights and freedoms and respect for the dignity and worth of human person shall be guaranteed, and in which effective participation by the people through their elected representatives in administration at all levels shall be ensured. Why I have read these two parts of our constitution? Only to say that this government is not violating only human rights, violating the very existence of our constitution. Now that after 72 years of international human rights declarations, we are discussing human rights of Bangladesh. And it is this 10th December every year for last 12 years is a sad day for us, agony for our people, that this government is done to these people, to this country, only to stay in power. They have destroyed democracy, rule of law. They have destroyed, as I said, all the institutions. Now the country is suffering in every respect because the government is not elected by people. They are not responsible to the people. That's why in every sector, government has lost all the control. Everywhere, from bank to the any financial institution, looting is taking place. Every day, the society is rotting because the people in power, they exercise their enormous power for doing all the bad things in the society. And to get rid of this, people are united to get rid of this fascist government. With this view in mind, people are united. But government is taking again steps by which they can suppress the people's wish and people's view. Now ahead of us, we believe that we have to restore democracy. And to restore democracy, we have to free the mother of democracy, begum Khaleda, from her house imprisonment. We have to bring back our acting chairman, Tarique Rahman, to lead the democratic movement in this country. And to create a circumstances for this, we are the Nationalist Party organizing our organizations, and we are uniting the people so that one day people can come to the street and throw out this autocratic government. We believe, we know that autocratic government will not leave power in peace or easily. People will have to come up to the street and remove them. We had a history in our country. We have removed Ayub Khan's regime, autocratic regime. We have removed in Bangladesh Hossein Mohammad Ershad's autocratic government by the people's Afsars. And we are waiting to see people's Afsars in our country. At the end of my deliberation, I like to thank you for hearing us, and especially the members of the diplomatic corps for being present with us to hear us. Last of all, I like to thank the European Union. On 7th December, they have passed a declaration or act by the name of Magnitsky Act, where they are pledging to punish or grant sanction to the people or the organization who violate human rights. I hope that they mean business, and this issue is a global issue. That's why we want global attention. And we believe that lot of our friends from all over the world is concerned about the human rights position in Bangladesh. আমি সর্বশেষে আমি সবাইকে আবার ধন্যবাদ জানাই, আমাকে এখানে আমন্ত্রণ জানানোর জন্য ধন্যবাদ জানাই আমাদের হিউম্যান রাইটস কমিটি বিএনপির। আপনারা অত্যন্ত সুন্দর একটি বই, এটা আপনাদের সিস্টেমেটিক একটা স্টাডির মধ্য দিয়ে এই বইগুলো প্রকাশ করছেন। আগে আরেকটি করেছেন, এটা দ্বিতীয় বই। এই বইয়ের মধ্যে যে হিউম্যান রাইটস ভায়োলেশনের সব কিছু আছে। এদেশে যে গণতন্ত্রহীনতা এবং বিচারহীনতা, যার কারণে আজকে সমাজ, দেশ, রাষ্ট্র ধ্বংসের মুখে চলে গেছে, সেই বিষয়টি, সেই চিত্র আপনারা তুলে ধরেছেন। এবং যদি এটা আমাদের যারা আমাদের ফ্রেন্ডস আছে আউটসাইড আওয়ার কান্ট্রি, আমাদের যারা বিদেশে আছে, বিদেশে যারা আমাদের নেতাকর্মী আছে, তাদের মাধ্যমে আমাদের বিদেশের বন্ধুদের কাছে এই বইটি যদি পৌঁছে দেওয়া যায়, তাহলে আমরা মনে করি যে এই বইটি প্রকাশের আসল উদ্দেশ্য সফল হবে। আমি সেই সফলতা কামনা করি এবং পরিশেষে এই সরকারকে, এই ফেসিবাদী সরকারকে হটানোর জন্য সকলকে যে যে অবস্থানে আছে সেখান থেকে অবদান রেখে ঐক্যবদ্ধ হয়ে আমরা এই দেশে আমরা শান্তি ফিরিয়ে আনবো, গণতন্ত্র ফিরিয়ে আনবো এবং মানুষের অধিকার ফিরিয়ে আনবো এবং জনগণের সরকার প্রতিষ্ঠা করে এই সকল যে হিউম্যান রাইটস ভায়োলেশন হয়েছে তার বিরুদ্ধে আমরা যথাযথ ব্যবস্থা গ্রহণ করব। এই প্রত্যাশা নিয়ে আমি আমার বক্তব্য শেষ করছি এবং আমাদের অ্যাক্টিং চেয়ারম্যান এবং মাননীয় প্রধান অতিথির বক্তব্যের পরেই এই সভা সমাপ্ত হবে। এই কথা বলে আপনাদের সকলকে ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে আমি শেষ করছি। থ্যাংক ইউ অল, থ্যাংক ইউ those who have attended us. Thank you.
Dr. Khundawar Musharraf Hussain, for your nice speeches. We have with us Mr. Anwar Hussain Khokon and Mr. Humayun Kabir, International Affairs Secretary of BNP. They joined us from UK. We have with us Dr. Enamul Haq Choudhury, our member of our Foreign Affairs Committee. May I now proceed to invite our chief guest, the icon of our Yat community, the BNP acting chairman, who has launched this book at the beginning of today's event, Mr. Tarique Rahman. Mr. Tarique Rahman, he is one of the biggest human rights violations victims in Bangladesh, who has been in exile, who is forced to stay in exile. In spite of staying in exile, he has been facing a number of cases every day. It is political persecution, and these kind of political persecutions are termed as crime against humanity under the Rome Statute, as well as under Act number 19 of 1973 of Bangladesh. Thank you. May I now request Tarique Rahman, Mr. Tarique Rahman, to deliver his speech.
Thank you. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Mr. Chairman of today's event, ladies and gentlemen, my party colleagues, friends from the international community, and most importantly, all family members of victims subject to enforced disappearance and extrajudicial killings who are participating in today's program. Assalamu alaikum and good evening to you all in Dhaka. Today, 10th December, marks the UN designated International Human Rights Day. I take this opportunity to pay tribute to all those human rights activists and organizations who work to make the world a better place and break it free from the hands of injustice. The people of Bangladesh, faced with many atrocities of miscarriages of justice, breakdown of rule of law, barring of freedom of expression, and onslaught of a global pandemic, remaining strong and brave to be hopeful of a better future. On this occasion, I recall all those citizens of the country who have sacrificed their lives for establishing democracy and also those who have been injured, tortured, and suffered in many ways. And I particularly take this opportunity to recall all my fellow party colleagues who have given their lives in fighting against the atrocities of an unelected regime in the hope of restoring the rights of the people of Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina's highly flawed government in Bangladesh continued to rule the country through influencing state institutions to fulfill its objectives, through brutal forces on the people of the country. Law enforcement authorities, the judicial system, businesses, people's rights, all are all at the desire of a flawed government that rules by applying state terror to influence and manipulate all institutions to fulfill the desire of a one-party state. Today we see the Bangladesh state exchequer is exploited to erect sculpture of a past ruler to justify the forceful presence of one-party rule across the country. Yet the state fails to provide any kind of social protection to those who need it most in this pandemic. No support to provide food and shelter for the economically disadvantaged people. No adequate financial support to those who have lost jobs or face long-term financial difficulties. No support for small businesses, but yet we see millions of crores being looted by beneficiaries of the ruling political regime from state banks, institutions, and organizations. Endemic corruption and violation of human rights across all sectors is at an all-time high in Bangladesh. Friends, you all heard today the distress and grave pain of the people of those subject to extrajudicial killings and disappearance go through every day in the hope that they will hear the news of their loved one returning one day, or in the hope they will see justice of those who have been killed at the violent hands of the state. I'm grateful to Bangladesh Nationalist Party's Human Rights Committee for this timely publication, highlighting systematic violation of rights under state influence in the country. I hope friends in the international community will find some factual basis in this substantive documentation of case studies to further the work of restoring people's rights in Bangladesh. In today's world, it is not good enough for political parties and governments to continue business as usual and turn a blind eye to human rights. Political leaders must exercise vision to safeguard their well-being of their people by allowing them the freedom to express their will. A renewed pledge to commit to reforming legislation is required to incorporate inclusive right in a country that is fit for purpose. The root cause of the sharp demise of human rights in Bangladesh resides in the dismantling of the electoral process and thus people's right to democratic franchise. Friends, together we must raise our voices nationally and internationally to restore the democratic process and human rights in Bangladesh. Thank you all again for taking the time to attend this event, and I wish you all well and every success in your endeavor to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Guest, for your nice deliberations on this occasion. We appreciate your time and effort to grace this occasion, and thank you all. I think the meeting is over today.